Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. It is Monday, July 22nd, 8:46 a.m., and we are heading into the final couple weeks of July before we get into August. So we've got a lot to talk about going into the basically end of the summer in regards to the market. Now, obviously, over the weekend, the big news was that Joe Biden has dropped out of the 2024 presidential campaign, and he has fully endorsed Kamala Harris. I am not going to go very in-depth and talk about all my thoughts on the subject. I did that last night in an emergency stream, so if you're curious about my thoughts, you can go watch the stream from last night. We talked for a good hour about the implications of this, what this means, how this is going to affect the markets, yada, yada. We'll touch on it a little bit throughout the stream today, but last night we talked about it and went more in depth. Here is Joe Biden's letter that he put out last night on Twitter. And he said he will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about the decision. He also said or Kamala said this morning that she'll be talking at 11:30 publicly, and she'll be making an appearance. So we will get a little bit more clarity from her today, given Joe Biden has endorsed her right after he put out that letter. But we won't hear from Biden for another couple days because he still has COVID and he's still in his Delaware house isolated. So I think it'll take a couple of days until we hear from him, but he's out. And as a result of him getting out, that has had massive, widespread implications on the crypto markets, which we are going to talk about, on the actual stock market, which it does seem looks like it might be a bit choppy over the next couple of weeks. And we're going to talk about why those reasons are for why it could be choppy. And also for the futures market. How are the futures going to price in the Kamala versus Trump presidency, if Kamala even is the candidate, because that's not confirmed yet? And will that be a better argument for why Trump should win, or will that make it harder for Trump to win? Kamala has already raised $52 million in the past 24 hours. So obviously there's been a lot of short-term momentum that has been building for her campaign, given that Biden has dropped out. Elizabeth Warren has endorsed her. What's his name? Gavin Newsom has endorsed her. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton. A lot of the parties starting to come together around Kamala. And the question is going to be over the next coming weeks, will that party consolidation finally be able to create momentum in the campaign for her, given with Biden's presidency and campaign, there was really no consolidation. In fact, there was just a lot of fracturing of the party. And that led to a campaign that seemed like it was much more obvious that Trump was going to beat Biden. So we're going to see. We're going to find out. And we will see how the American public thinks of what's going to go on. I did ask I did ask on Twitter a couple of basically hours ago, 10 hours ago, on who do you think could beat Trump? You know, do you think Harris has a legitimate chance to beat Trump? And the overwhelming arguments under that post were that most people do not think Harris can beat Trump. So we're going to see what ends up happening, but that's going to have a lot of implications for the market. And if her campaign does start to get momentum, we're going to see how that implicates the broader crypto market, stock market, futures market, equity market, real estate market. All these different assets that are going to depend on who becomes the next president are going to get implicated in the coming weeks. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We got a lot to talk about right now. Let's get into some macro news that I want to discuss, and then we'll get even further into presidency and all of that later in the stream. I want to start off with one chart that I showed yesterday on the market close, or not the market close, the emergency stream. And then I want to play a video that kind of highlights this chart. So this chart right here, to me, signals why we are probably going to have a little bit of shaky times over the next couple of weeks. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that going into the end of July, early August, you're probably going to see a little bit of downside momentum in the broader markets. This is the S&P 500 index seasonality that has happened since 20 years. And it just takes an average of what happens over the past 20 years. And what happens is you get some choppiness going into the next 2 months. And that's kind of okay. The S&P has already rallied up about 18% year to date. You would expect some kind of downside momentum because things going up in a straight line forever usually is not how it works out unless we're in a bubble. And so people taking profits, to me, in certain sectors, even if it's not in the broader index, does make some sense. Does that mean that the S&P can't keep going higher? Right now, we're up in the pre-markets. We were from 548 to 552. Right now, 552.4. No, I mean, the S&P could obviously go to 5,800 by the end of August and things could be amazing. However, it is more likely than not that earnings aren't the best, even though they're good, or even earnings are good, but still market sells off a little bit and just gives it a little bit of a breather before we get into August. I don't think that has to happen, but just given how high we've gone up, and how quickly we've gone up, I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen as well. Yes, CrowdStrike right now in the pre-market is down 291. CrowdStrike is down because Piper Sandler downgraded them to 310 from 400. So I think that downgrade is what's hurting them right now. We'll see how the open market reacts to CrowdStrike. I bought 5 shares at 307. I'll buy another 5 shares if we get lower into the 280s. And so we'll see if that ends up happening today. SoFi's up in the pre-market. Mercado Libre's up. Rivian is up 2%. Tesla is up 2%. IWM actually up a little bit. Interestingly enough, not only is IWM up, Nvidia is up 2%. And the reason why Nvidia is up is because they are finding a way to sell to China. So we'll talk about that in a bit as well, but they're re-architecting some of their chips to be able to get through and sell into places that have some restrictions on it, which potentially might be just more business for them. So we'll talk about that. Meta's up 1.6% right now. Starbucks is down a little bit. Elliott Management did take an activist stake in Starbucks. I'm not sure what the exact percentage is, but I think it's like 3 to 4%. And so they were up 7% on Friday. We'll see if that follows through in the coming days, but Elliott Management did take a stake in them. Fortinet, another cybersecurity name, that one is up a little bit. Palo Alto Networks is up 1%. Sentinel One, that one is up 5%. And then what's the other one? Zscaler. Zscaler is up 1%. So CrowdStrike's the only ones that is down today in the cybersecurity space. All the other competitors are up. So we'll see when the market opens how that one plays out as well. Celsius can't catch a break. Is Celsius still down? Is Celsius still down? Celsius. Wow. Celsius is down 4%. Oh boy. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So let me play this clip. This is highlighting some of the choppiness that we can expect in the markets over the next coming weeks. And then we'll get into some of these individual names.
Right now in the markets is Stephanie Ling. She is Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Hightower Advisors. She's also a CNBC contributor. And Steph, you were prescient. You said on Friday when you were talking to our staff that you would hold off on any of your macro thoughts because you just weren't sure what could happen on the political front this weekend. You were right. Got a lot of news yesterday. Yeah. What do you think now?
Wow, it's a crazy time. I think the market certainly could be volatile for the next couple of months for obvious reasons. But I have always said that it's the mix of Congress that is most important versus who is the president. And before the Biden news, Becky, it did look like there would be a real possibility that the Republicans would sweep the both houses and as well as the presidency. So there's a lot of time ahead. We've got 4 months to go, but it does still look like whatever happens with Congress looks like Trump will likely be the president. But again, a lot of things can happen between now and then. I think you just want to take a step back. And you mentioned we have a whole bunch of earnings coming this week. We have 30% of the S&P 500 in terms of companies reporting. We're going to hear the first line of thinking from these companies. And that's the good news, right? That we're going to be able to understand the fundamentals. And that's the most important. So you can kind of, in a portfolio, you can shift towards a Trump portfolio or now a Harris or whoever it will be portfolio. I think that's kind of risky. I just want to focus on good companies that are delivering on good earnings with solid guidance ahead. And I think we're going to hear from a lot of companies. We're going to have a lot to choose from.
Why don't we talk about one of the stocks that you had owned ahead of time last week, DHI, DR Horton, came in with.
Okay, so the volatility that the election cycle is creating obviously is going to be one of the reasons why some of the macro is going to be hard to analyze. However, although it will be hard to analyze, we do know that some things in the macro are going okay. First of all, we got oil under $80, folks. I haven't seen oil under $80 right now. WTI crude at $79.40 in 2 months. Maybe we touched it very briefly, and we're still, it's not definitively under 80. It's 60 cents away from going back to 80, but it's down. That is a very, very good thing, and that's really good in the context of CPI. I think August CPI is going to be one of those CPIs that finally has a 2 handle on it, given we got 3% last month. Then we got 4.2 on the 10-year treasury. So that's still coming down. It's not at that 4.1 level, but it is still down from where it was on Friday. And then we also have money market funds, which although they increased to 6.15 trillion, 9.6 billion. What I found out over the weekend, I did some more digging on money market funds. 2.5 trillion out of this 6.5 trillion is retail. Let me know if anyone actually knew that. I actually thought a far majority of this was corporate and was like family offices and things of that nature. No, 2.5 trillion out of that 6 trillion is people like you and me that have our money in money market funds. So if that is the case, when that yield starts collapsing on itself as the Fed cuts rates, hopefully 2 times, that also, I mean, I think when Tom Lee says that's a tailwind for the market, I think he's talking about the 2 trillion. The 4 trillion that's been in there for a long time. Really, there's been like 3 to 4 trillion there since 2009. That's never going to leave. That's just money that always stays there from corporations, family offices, real estate companies. They like having assets there. But the 2 trillion that's getting 5.5% easy money that has never really gotten 5.5% before, I think that's coming back to the markets. And if that's coming back to the markets, even if it's only 500 billion of that, the S&P has 500 billion in assets under management. We're probably going to see a bigger surge from the volatility of that money coming back in, even though it is going to be around the election time. So I do think even if August is not the best, September, October, November, the real Santa Claus rally, maybe it even starts at the end of October, is what we are looking forward to if we can get a solid earning seasons. Bsov says, yes, the 2 trillion is mine. I'm sorry, guys. Bsov, we need you to put that 2 trillion in the market. So you gotta stop being scared and playing with the money market funds. Robinhood 2288 in the pre-markets. I'm not really sure why Robinhood is down. It's probably because Bitcoin is down. Bitcoin was at like 68.5. Now it's at 67.8. So Robinhood really following Bitcoin at this point. I do think Robinhood could see some downside momentum if the broader markets like the S&P falls to 520, 530, because in general, right, that would be maybe less trading and that probably could hurt Robinhood. However, I do think earnings are going to be pretty good. If anybody missed it, Vlad did respond to me on Twitter on Friday. And someone said Schwab was like, leaving them hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the CrowdStrike thing. And so I just tweeted Vlad's picture on top of that post. I thought it was funny. And so yeah, that's the that's the post. So someone said Schwab's costing me so much money, yada yada, and I just put Vlad's picture in front of it. And then Vlad commented with the dead emoji. I think based on the Fortune interview that we saw a couple of days ago, I think he feels pretty confident that he's going to crush Q2. And I think at this point, the stock has gone up so much this year, it really does need an earnings to kind of justify the multiple and the premium that it's got. So I think Vlad's tweeting, Vlad's doing these public interviews. We got Bitcoin that's much higher than it was before and probably going a bit higher going into this Trump conference or Trump speech at the Bitcoin conference. I think Robinhood will be fine. But they need to just crush earnings, and that earnings will probably solidify them in the eyes of the markets as well. We have Meta up 2% right now at 485. SoFi up 1%, 755. Rivian up 2%. Let's look at the Mag 7. So Mag 7, we've got Amazon that's up, Nvidia that's up, Tesla that's up, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Apple's up. So everything is up. Now, this might be a little bit of a head fake, because we saw this on Friday after a red day on Thursday and Wednesday. And we were like, oh, so we had 2 red days. We're going to go green. And then we got a 3rd red day. So I will be very interested to see as the market opens, where do these stocks, particularly the Mag 7, end up going? Because if they go red for a 4th day in a row, it's not going to be crazy. It actually is probably going to be good going into Q2 earnings for a lot of these companies so that they're not like overly elevated. But it would fit the trend of pumping in the pre-markets and then dumping as soon as the market opens, because the far majority of people are just raising cash if they're not rotating that money. And we'll see IWM, small caps, if that finally starts to go inverse to big tech, because if that does, maybe that money is rotating. If not, then that money is probably staying just in cash. So that's what we got there. Now, Celsius, I don't know why Celsius is down another 5%. If anyone knows, let me know. This one is very surprising. I did not expect Celsius to take another beating after going down basically 50% since Friday, or not since Friday, since what was it? Basically April, or yeah, April is when it peaked at $99. I'm trying to see. I don't have any news right now on why Celsius is down. If anyone knows, let me know. But no updates, no downgrades, nothing like that for why Celsius is taking a beating. But it just continues to take a beating. It's one of those things where it's like no one is stepping in to really buy the dip every day. I mean, we've seen this thing fall from 70 to 60 to 50 and now into the 47 range. So we'll see what happens there. The only arguments I could say is probably some of the media stories of coming out about Celsius with too much caffeine. We saw the Wall Street Journal article a couple, what was it, on Tuesday that came out last week? And then also the growth slowing down in terms of sales. However, I thought that was priced in at this point. Like we know the growth slowing down. I felt like the market had priced that in pretty aggressively, but maybe they were pricing in a little bit more in the context of Celsius. CrowdStrike in the pre-market. Let's see where this one opens up. So a couple arguments I'll give for why the CrowdStrike dip is overblown, and then we'll see what ends up happening from there. I think there's like 3 or 4 reasons on my mind for why CrowdStrike probably around 260, 270 is actually a good dip buy. Number one is people are estimating the losses and the lawsuits to be in the billions. It's going to be more so in the hundreds of millions. I talked to a couple people that were heavy shareholders of CrowdStrike over the weekend, and I asked them what they thought about that. And they were just like, dude, people are freaking out for like really weird reasons because A, they have $4.5 billion of cash on the balance sheet, so they'll be able to pay it off. B, it's going to be hundreds of millions, not only because of the extent of the lawsuits, but also they have insurance. Like, this is a business that has insurance. The insurance is going to be able to cover a decent amount of that as well. So those are 2 elements to why the losses are not going to be that big of a deal. Number 3, a lot of people are saying, well, their EPS was always ridiculous at 570. That EPS is going to be cut in half pretty soon because not their EPS, their PE. That PE is going to be cut in half pretty soon because their EPS growth is absolutely phenomenal and it's accelerating. It's one of the only cybersecurity startups that's growing at plus 30% year over year, doing almost $4 billion in ARR. So I think the growth would have to slow down so substantially for CrowdStrike to fall into the low 200s. Could it fall to 250? Possibly. I mean, even today, it could take a bit of a tumble given the PR, the news stories that come out. But to get into the below 200s, I think it would be pretty tough because that means the premier valuation would have to go down, which means the growth would have to slow down. The only way the growth slows down if all the clients that are using CrowdStrike start canceling their deals, start wanting to get reimbursements, etc. I don't know if that happens overnight. I think that could happen. I don't know if that is going to happen, which is why I think it's at least worth the risk reward if that doesn't happen and those fears are overblown. Another thing that's important to understand is Wiz. So that startup that Google bought for for $23 billion. That startup is trading at 50 times ARR. CrowdStrike is trading actually lower than that. So it's kind of funny because the amount of premium that the market is willing to pay for cybersecurity. I don't even fully understand why, right? I'm not an expert in the field, but it's just highlighting how massive of an industry it is and how important it is to think about cybersecurity in a broader light. And if a private startup can get that much of a premium from Google, the biggest acquisitions Google's ever paid, I think Google is recognizing, along with a lot of the other big tech companies, that cybersecurity is something they just simply cannot get behind on, especially what Wiz specializes in, which is cybersecurity in the cloud. If that's the case, I am curious to see if the market steps in at that 270, 285 range, even 290 when the market opens. And they say that this is one of the most premier companies in the world. This is one of the only companies that's actually growing at a level that is substantial. They're growing off of a pretty big base in the billions already. Maybe we end up buying the dip. Remember, it pumped to 380 because they got included in the S&P 500. That was the pump from 300 to 380. 380 I thought was a bit ridiculous. Now back in the 290s, 270s, it at least gets a bit more exciting because it'll get back to the 380s, but that'll happen more naturally, not because of the S&P 500 pump. And so, maybe that was also an excuse on Friday to sell it off and gain some momentum as well. In cybersecurity, it feels like reputation is everything. Yeah, that's the big thing there. If reputation is everything in cybersecurity and CrowdStrike has lost their reputation, then this thing is definitely headed for a bit of a downturn. I am a bit skeptical that their entire reputation is gone and that all their customers that use them are just going to switch overnight. Maybe that does happen. And if that does happen, you could see below 200 pretty quickly. If that doesn't happen, and again, to some of the larger CrowdStrike bulls I talked to over the weekend, they thought that was just a bit of a ridiculous concern. Are they biased? Sure, but they have a sizable enough position where I kind of trust the research they've done on the company and they know it a little bit more in depth than me. That might signal that the market is overreacting in the short term and that their earnings are still going to be pretty strong. So we will see. We will see what ends up happening with CrowdStrike. It's more of a trade for me. It's more of a trade. It's not a long-term hold. I mean, if this thing falls below 200, it will definitely become a long-term hold. But to me, it's a simple trade. It's 5-10 shares. It's nothing that crazy. I just looked at it and I did not feel that it deserved. I felt like if the global IT outage was as bad as it was, which it was as bad, the market would have punished it even more. And we're talking about down 20, 30%. Maybe it takes weeks for that to play out, and we'll see. But on the initial reaction, it felt like the market easily wanted to step in and buy in the 290s, 280s, because they knew how important this company is and how much they're the ones that are growing in the broader space. And so we'll see what ends up happening. But today will be an interesting day to see if it plays out back into the 300s. Right now, CrowdStrike at 289, down about 4.99%. Robinhood, 22.99. Palo Alto is up. Zscaler is up. So all the cybersecurity names are up except CrowdStrike. And then you got Tesla as well, up 1.92%. Oh, Tellurian. Yes. Thank you, Jed, for sharing this. So Tellurian, this is an energy company. If you were in this one, they just got acquired at $1 a share. So they were 57 cents on Friday. Now they're $1, up 67 cents, 67% in the pre-markets. So if you were in Tellurian somehow, you were up 60% over the weekend. So not bad. Okay, let's look at earnings. So we had a couple of earnings today in the morning. We have TFC. Let me read off the numbers on that. So today is 22nd. So TFC, they beat on EPS by 10.9%. They beat on revenue by 4.3%. So revenue, $5 billion, EPS, 91 cents. They were up a little bit. Now they're down 0.73%. They are up a lot in the past week. They're up like almost, I think, 9%. So that's probably why they're taking a little bit of a tumble, just like the stock already was up a bit. I haven't looked at their guidance, but they did beat on EPS and revenue, which is good. We want to see a regional bank as big as Truist, which is one of the 7th largest banks in the United States, one of the biggest regional bank, to do well. And on EPS and revenue, they hit their goals, which was good to see. Verizon also had earnings. Let me look at Verizon stock. Verizon is down 4%. They missed on revenue by 0.80%. Instead of $33.06 billion, they brought in $32.8 billion. Small miss, but it is a miss. And then EPS, the street expected 115. They reported 115. So Verizon basically came in line with expectations. Slight miss. They're down about 4%. TFC is down a little bit, but TFC beat on pretty much all its expectations. I'm Beneficial says, my girl works at TFC. They're one of the best positioned regionals indeed, but facing some internal hurdles like others. Yeah, and I think the biggest hurdle they were facing was the insurance business and raising their Capital One ratios, or raising enough money to keep those Capital One ratios intact. And they sold that a while ago. So that definitely helped them this quarter. Now it's going to be a question of if the street believes that that sale was enough to give them momentum going further into the future. So that's what we have on earnings. The only other earnings we have today, nothing else today. So tomorrow's going to be crazy. In the morning, we have Coca-Cola, UPS, GE, GM, Spotify, Xfinity, and that's it for the morning. And in the afternoon, we have Tesla, Google, Visa, and Texas Instruments, and Capital One. So Tesla and Google obviously going to be the biggest ones that we'll talk about. But it's going to be exciting to see what Tesla and Google kind of plays out as well. Okay, let's actually talk about Tesla. Benny says, amid Elon laser eyes on X. Yeah, Elon's been tweeting all over the weekend because Elon is not a fan of the new administration or potential administration, which is Kamala Harris. So he's been adamantly telling everyone Trump, Vance, LFG. That's kind of what he's been tweeting. This is his profile picture right here with the kind of crypto eyes, potentially signaling. I don't think this means anything for crypto, quite frankly. I don't think Elon cares that much about crypto. Maybe he does, but he's not actively tweeting about it. He cares about Trump getting elected, and if Trump gets elected, that's good for crypto. But I don't think these eyes necessarily signal he cares too much about crypto. But he does care about Tesla. So let's talk about Tesla. Here's my question to the chat. What do you guys think is going to happen with Tesla on Friday? Do you think it goes up, or do you think it goes down? I am kind of torn on this. Tesla stock is up a lot right now. Tesla holds at 10,000 Bitcoin. Do they still hold 10,000 Bitcoin? Do they? I thought they sold it. If they do, then yeah, that might actually help. I thought they got rid of their Bitcoin. Okay, so Tesla may have some Bitcoin as well. So Tesla's earnings tomorrow, I think, given the run, which is up about 75% from the lows at 130 now to 240, it's going to be very difficult for Tesla to say something that massively gets them above this 240 level, given they kind of rose to 240 out of nowhere. Now, my hypothesis on Tesla is that the reason it got to 240 was because the institutional investors came together and they said, hey, there's something bigger here. Forget the cars. FSC is real. We got to get in on this before it gets too late. If I'm wrong about that, and that was a retail rally, which I don't understand how retail could have pumped $300 billion into the company, but let's say that was, then it can easily take a nosedive if the results aren't that amazing and things go bad. The thing about the results, though, is we already know the deliveries. We already know Tesla's probably going to miss slightly on EPS of 60 cents, which is what the street wants, and revenues of 24 billion. Maybe they beat on both of those metrics, but they're going to be slight. They're probably going to miss on those metrics like they did in Q1, but that's going to be slight. The only thing that's going to matter, I think, is the actual conference call where Elon, or a slide in the deck where they say, hey, by June of 2025, we will have an official robotaxi out in the world. Or they will say, hey, it's going to be exchanged from August to October, and we're officially having that robotaxi event in October. And here's why that robotaxi event is going to matter, because we still don't have an update on when the event is going to happen. Or, hey, our energy business is growing massively because the demand for energy is becoming massive given the AI demand. Like, they're going to have to say something that's different than the actual cars for the street to get excited, given how the stock has performed. As you can see right here, from about 182 to 270 and now heading in the 240 range. There's going to have to be something. And I don't know what Elon says. I don't know what Elon says to get the market that excited about Tesla. Martin said it all comes down to Elon on the call for sure. I agree. I don't think he's going to say anything about Optimus. He can't pump Optimus with investors. He could pump Optimus at the shareholder meeting like he did in Texas a month ago. He can't do it for investors. I mean, like, I think you have to, for institutional investors, you have to have a little bit more sophistication on where you see the future going. And I think it's very simple. If Tesla says FSD is coming out in mid-2025, here's the 3 milestones, and here are the 3 dates we expect to reach these milestones on. Here's, where we think the Cybercab is going to go. Here's what we think some of the unit economics look like. I think that justifies the run-up, and that maybe expands the multiple, along with rates coming down in September. If that doesn't happen, then I don't know, maybe the street tanks it a little bit. But it would be weird for the street to tank it, given they knew on the rise from 130 to 270 that it's not like anything substantial had changed other than the robotaxi event, which did get changed. It got delayed. So like, I don't know why would the street tank it if you brought it up this much? You obviously brought it up because you felt like going into the future, something good would happen with FSD. Over the weekend, Tesla did announce a couple of different things. Number one, they offered $1,000 off your next Tesla. Upgrade your enhanced autopilot to full self-driving and transfer it to a new Tesla purchase to get $1,000 off your new order. So you can take delivery by August 15th, and you would also get 3 months of free supercharging. I also believe they introduced a 2% APR on Friday, if I'm not wrong. I'll see if I can find that, but I think they introduced 1.99% APR, and that is also something that got the street a bit excited. They increased the price of the Model X and Model S by $2,000 in the United States. Yes, here it is, on July 18th. So this was on Friday. Tesla introduced a loan rate of 1.99% APR on all new Model Y finance orders in the United States, which is pretty good. I mean, like, this is exactly why we probably saw the delivery numbers go up, because they introduced a 0.99% APR back in, I think it was April or May. And so if that is enough to get people excited versus buying a Honda or a Toyota with a 6 or 7% APR, then maybe that's the reason Tesla can get their delivery numbers up. Now, the margins are still not going to be the best, even if they get their delivery numbers up, but it will show to the street that people do want to buy Tesla over other cars as long as they can finance it. And then if rates actually come down, it also signals to the street, hey, our deliveries might end up getting a decent surge, because the only thing holding us back are rates, not just like people not wanting a Tesla. Jet says Tesla's down 40% from its all-time high, which was 2 to 3 years ago, and did not have Optimus or soon deployed robotaxis. Still underpriced. I agree. I mean, it's down a lot from that $414 price that it was at in 2021. And the business has fundamentally changed. It's changed, obviously, for the better. There's a lot more innovations here, but the stock is also up a lot. And that's my only concern. It's like, does the stock really have momentum to keep going higher, especially going into August, and when we know August is not going to be the best time for the broader markets. If this year August ends up being better than what has historically been, that'll be awesome. It's just usually that that doesn't tend to happen going into the month of August. Here is one argument right here, or one video right here I want to show. Here's Bill Gates on Elon Musk. I still think, or Elon still thinks, Bill Gates has his short. We don't officially know. Elon did say a couple weeks ago he would obliterate Bill Gates' short. Here's Bill Gates on Elon Musk in a new interview.
In the climate fight. One of the other people sort of most associated with green technology, of course, is Elon Musk. Do you talk to him much these days?
I've talked to Elon recently. We were at an event together called the Breakthrough Prize in LA, and I said hi to him. But Tesla's a huge contribution.
I would imagine he wouldn't want to say hi back if you were shorting his stock with like $500 billion. So that would be a little awkward.
To driving the car industry towards electric.
And on Tesla, I mean, more than anyone else, Elon Musk, I think, has sort of shown that green technology and green solutions can be cool and exciting and worth buying. But are you disappointed that Elon doesn't really seem to talk much about climate these days? He's more interested in talking about culture wars and other issues.
He talks a lot. I hope he'll talk more about climate. He's very, very smart, and he's made a contribution within that area that is super important.
What would you like him to talk when he talks about climate? What would you like him to say?
I don't think he'll listen to anybody telling him what to talk about. So he's unique, and he'll talk about whatever he.
So there you go. If he does have the short position, I'm sure Elon would love to obliterate the short position, but that's probably why Bill Gates and Elon don't necessarily get along that much. Okay, so the Nvidia news, let's touch on that for a little bit. So Nvidia is working on a version of its new flagship AI chips for the China markets that would be compatible with current US export controls. I think there's two ways to read this. You could read this as kind of bullish or bearish. The bullish way to read this is that, Nvidia is finding a way to maneuver their current set of products in a way that allows the Chinese market to buy their products, but also it is a legal way for them to sell into the Chinese markets. That's one way to read it. The bearish way to read it is, hey, Nvidia needs to hit their numbers and they're not seeing enough growth in their business outside of China, which means demand is slowing down. Therefore, they're adapting to create a flagship AI chip that could work in China. I think the bearish way to read it is not the best way to read it. I think that's an argument you can make, but given the internal checks that a lot of the Wall Street firms have looked at, like Bernstein or Barclays, around what's going on with Nvidia, it seems like demand is not slowing down. But I guess one argument could be that Nvidia only cares about selling to China now because demand is slowing down. However, I think they've been always working on this, and they're finally coming up with a way to actually sell to China. Remember, we saw on Friday, they probably have intermediate ways to sell to China, either by selling to Singapore or countries that are closer to China. And that's how those chips get into China. But the margins on those aren't as good as just selling directly. Same thing with selling chips to Google and Microsoft, and then they rent out those GPUs to other companies versus just selling it to all the companies. There's obviously a bit of a margin compression there if that takes place. So we'll see what ends up happening with Nvidia, but that was one of the arguments today. That's why I think Nvidia is up right now in the pre-markets, because the market's like, all right, if you're selling to China, we'll get more numbers. I'm just so curious if this ends up lasting, because every single day it's gone up 2% in the pre-markets. It's then taken a little bit of a tumble. CrowdStrike now 287 in the pre-market. Someone asked, will I buy the dip? I want to see how the market reacts to it as soon as we open. I want to see if we head below 280 and if we fall to like 279, 275, because that's when I would probably deploy the next 5 shares that I was going to buy, or if it rebounds easily into the 300s. It's down right now, if people are wondering, because of a Piper Sandler downgrade. Ironically enough, other firms didn't downgrade it, right? So you got to take the downgrades with a grain of salt. Bank of America kept their $400 price target, and Bank of America said this is vastly overblown. This is one isolated incident. This is probably not going to last for a long time. And Piper Sandler said, no, there's a reputation damage. So we're going to see kind of how the market resolves those concerns by different firms and how they think about CrowdStrike. But when the market opens, we'll see what happens there. Celsius is still down 5.47% now at $46.87. Bitcoin, 67,715. It hit 68,000 last night. SoFi right here up 1.2%. Netflix up a little bit at 637. And then Meta here up 2% at 486 on the day as well. Cool. So that's what we got in the context of CrowdStrike and also Tesla. Tesla's bucks will be to license FSD to other car makers worldwide. Yeah, and I think that's also a reason why Elon does not care about Trump getting elected. So here's a video over the weekend of Trump talking about his relationship with Elon, and then we'll talk about why Elon probably thinks Trump is bullish for him and bearish for other EVs.
But Elon endorsed me the other day, and I didn't even know this. He didn't even tell me about it. But he gives me $45 million a month. A month. Not 45 million. Gives me 45 million a month. And I talked to him just a little while ago to say I was coming here, how you doing? And he didn't even mention it. He didn't mention. I mean, other guys, they give you $2 and you got to take them to lunch. You got to wine them, dine them. No, he's a great guy, he really is. But, you know, he's never mentioned to me, why are you hitting the electric cars? Because he understands I'm not hitting it. I think it's incredible. I've had them. I've driven them. They're incredible. But they're not for everybody. Some people have to drive long distances.
So as you can see, Trump does not think EVs get you to long distances. But Elon over the weekend started commenting when people said, hey, this clip started going viral. And they were like, hey, Trump is like against EVs. Why do you like him? And Elon's like, it's going to be fine. And I think Elon's argument there, he literally said verbatim, it's going to be fine. I think the reason Elon thinks it's going to be fine is because he does not believe in 5 years Tesla is going to be selling cars. He thinks Tesla is going to be selling rides. And so if Rivian and Lucid are selling cars and they don't have FSD and people don't, as Jose said in the chat, that self-driving is like the only way he can even think of driving now that he's done it for a couple months, then Rivian's the one that's screwed if they don't have the IRA subsidy, or Lucid, or some of the other big auto manufacturers that are relying on that subsidy to boost their EV sales. If you're not selling rides, if you're not using AI to sell rides via some type of self-driving technology, you might not be in business as a EV car company. And so I think Elon's argument is, as long as he can convince Trump to like be on the right lane of the regulatory frameworks when it comes to self-driving, which maybe he already privately talked with Trump about that and Trump's on board, then he doesn't care about EVs, because then Trump gets to get whatever he wants, which is the Rust Belt parts of America in Michigan, Wisconsin, et cetera, that have car manufacturing to be able to still have their jobs. That's a win for him. And then Elon gets to kind of pseudo kill the other EV manufacturers by getting rid of the subsidy, because the subsidy is not the only thing that Tesla needs to be able to sell cars. And he gets someone in the White House that understands the transition from cars to AI in terms of self-driving. And that ultimately helps Elon's ambitions. So I think that's why Elon is a fan of Trump, and it's just going to be a question of if that thesis kind of plays out in terms of how Elon is seeing it right now. Elon did, I'm just looking at one of his tweets right now. It's 6:14. He tweeted this today. Tesla will have genuinely useful humanoid robots in low production for Tesla internal use next year, and hopefully high production for other companies in 2026. So right there, that was tweeted a couple hours ago. I just came across that screenshot. Elon is saying, hey, we believe by 2026, so basically 2 years from now, Optimus is going to be deployed. And that is a revenue stream that I think the street has not factored in at all. So there you go. That's at least somewhat of an argument for why Tesla deserves a bit of a premium. Now, the question is, will that timeline actually last? I don't know. But if it does, then maybe we've got more Optimus by 2026. Jed says make it 2030. You know, Figure, the other humanoid robotics company, they just deployed one of their robots to another site for a BMW. They announced that publicly. So if Figure starts deploying robots by 2025, I would imagine Tesla has to. There's no way Figure is going to, I think, go faster than Tesla, just given all the momentum and resources Tesla has. So if we see news that other startups like Apptronic, Figure, et cetera, all these humanoid companies have robots working in their enterprise clients by end of 2025, early 2026, Optimus, that's probably a realistic timeline then for Optimus. And if Elon doesn't have Optimus at that point, then they're just moving too slow. But if the entire industry is getting them to be deployed in the next couple of years, then maybe it does end up playing out for Optimus. Do you think Tesla gets to 200 again? I think if the S&P falls back to 515, Tesla could see 215-ish, 210. I think below 200 is going to be tough. I think there would have to be a sentiment change on the company for it to fall basically $100 billion in market cap. Could it happen? Yeah. The market would have to take a really big downturn. And I think the market will take a small downturn. I'm not counting on it, but I just historically, I think that could happen back to like the 530s, 520s. But I don't know if that means Tesla goes all the way down to 200. And again, I think that, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people in the chat would agree, that is healthy. Is very healthy to see a little bit of a pullback. That's not a bear market. That's just people taking some profit, securing it. It actually sets up a lot of these companies going into their earnings in a much better way. And then you can have more beats on the top and the bottom lines as we get into rate cuts. However, one thing to understand is this market is resilient. It is very hard to find a dip. That's actually one of the reasons I like CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike right now at 284. It's hard to find a good dip in this market. It really is. I mean, like some of the best names have fallen maybe 3 to 4% and they recover relatively easy. Definitely the S&P, right? It's been hard to get like a really solid dip if you want to deploy a ton of capital. So because it's been hard to get a very strong dip, maybe the next month is where you get that opportunity, or maybe the next month is where the market stays resilient and you're going to have some isolated names like a CrowdStrike that has a black swan event that gives it a bad dip, but other names maybe don't get the dip that people really wanted to see. Apple at 224. Palantir is at 28.93. We touched 29 in the pre-markets. The big news on Palantir was that Alex Karp came out and said he does not support Donald Trump to be the president. And so we talked about that on the show I did with Adam in the morning on Saturday. My basic thoughts on it are like, Trump, Karp was never a fan of Trump. He probably was never going to be a fan of Trump. Karp is also a bit more economically on the left, and so he doesn't like sort of those Republican policies. But he did mention that the Democrats are engaging in such massive political correctness, which he thinks is hindering their ability to compel voters to get on their side, that he said, how long do I have until I reconsider? And so that was interesting to see him kind of be on the side of, hey, I'm really not a fan of the Democratic Party. I'm still going to vote for them, but I don't like how it's necessarily playing out. We know Peter Thiel obviously is in support of Trump and JD Vance. I do think Peter in the chat yesterday, not Peter Thiel, a different Peter, he had a really good argument. And the argument was maybe Karp and Thiel are staying out of politics and not explicitly doing any endorsements because they know that when Thiel was endorsing Trump back in 2016 and Karp had to go take a meeting with a German head of state to try to sell his software, he walked into that meeting and it's like he already lost the pitch because the Europeans didn't like Trump. And they definitely didn't like Palantir being a quote unquote black box secret company going to steal your data. And then you've got Trump and the Thiel connection. So if they kind of just stay out of politics, maybe Trump ends up getting elected and the JD Vance connection does help Palantir. But the public facing image of the company is not tied to Trump so deeply so that when they go sell the product internationally, they're able to win over European clients. I think that may be one of the reasons why Peter definitely decided to stay out of politics and why Karp really hasn't spoken that much about it as well. And so we'll see what happens, but it'll be interesting to see where the election goes and how Karp's political views evolve based on the new administration. Okay, here we go. Monday, July 22nd, 9:30 a.m. Thank you everybody for being here. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. Palantir going slightly green, 28.89. As soon as the market opens now, 28.78. We'll get back to Palantir in a second. Tesla is up 244, up 2.2%. DJT is up 1%. Nvidia is up 1.88% at 120. TFC, 42.75. That's up about 1% on the day. Robinhood, wow, talk about a green candle. Robinhood dipped to, I think, 22.79 in the pre-markets, now at 23.42. So not bad for Robinhood. Celsius down 4%, 47.45. Palo Alto Networks is up at 333. Bitcoin, 67,593. Mercado Libre, 1670. Zscaler, 192. Centennial, 2316. That's up 6.61%. SoFi, 761, up 1.6%. Where is CrowdStrike? CrowdStrike is down 7.7%, 280. Let's give this about 10-15 minutes and see where this ends up going. 278 right now on the day. If we get closer to 270, I'm going to buy the next 5 shares that I was going to buy. I bought 5 shares already at 307 on Friday, so we'll see how that goes from there. But CrowdStrike right here at 281 on the day. S&P is green, 552, up 0.63%. Verizon down 4.6% on the day. Fortinet is up. Apple is up. Palantir 28.78. Hims, they got investigated by the FTC on Friday. No clue why. No one knows why. But the FTC did investigate them, and so they went down. I see you guys are commenting over how fast I talked as the market opened. You know, to me, it's kind of like a challenge because remember in debate, I talked really fast, and so if I can talk fast and clear, it's like it's a nice little challenge to me to see how fast I can talk. Snowflake here at 130, Eli Lilly at 860, Broadcom at 159. That's down from 170. QQQ at 479. GameStop's actually up a little bit. Wow, GameStop's up. Intel, all reliable, is back down to the low 30s where it deserves to be. Not deserves to be, but that's where it always ends up being, even if it has a pump. Remember, Intel only pumped because Trump said bad things about Taiwan Semi. But outside of that, there was really no fundamental reason for Intel to get to that $36 range. Taiwan Semi right here at 186. Let's look at the Mag 7. We're green. Tesla's green, Nvidia's green, Amazon's green, Google's green, Meta's green, Microsoft's green, Apple's green. So all 7 of these companies took a 3-day dip from Wednesday to Friday last week. So the question now, and it's only been 2 minutes, so we'll see over the next hour if these guys go to the downside and they continue to dip, or if the street buys up the dip and they don't care, or they think that it's been 3 days and it's time to get some exposure now to these names. CrowdStrike down 8% at 280. So CrowdStrike still taking a tumble right here. Again, that Piper Sandler downgrade was definitely something that affected them this morning. Robinhood 2367. There you go. Robinhood probably is going to be up because Bitcoin was 65,000 on Friday. Now Bitcoin touched 68 at 67 right now. So that is a tailwind for Robinhood. So makes sense right there. Netflix at 637, Meta at 45, SoFi 757. SoFi's earnings in 1 week. We've got rate cuts hopefully coming in about a month and a half. All of those are tailwinds for SoFi. So that potentially should be momentum even if we have a choppy August. The good thing about having a choppy August with stocks that have already been beaten up is that the question is how much more beat up can they get after they've recovered. So Tesla was beat up for the far majority of the year. Maybe August is bad, but does Tesla really go back to 160? It's going to be hard to see that. Does SoFi really go back down to $6 after being in a range for basically a year? Kind of hard to see that given the tailwinds that are coming up with rate cuts. So we'll see what happens there, but SoFi and Tesla both getting out of the ranges they were stuck in for the far majority of 2024. Where's Robinhood right now? Robinhood 2375, not bad. Robinhood getting some momentum. Palantir is 2870. So we got Palantir earnings as well on August 5th. We talked about if the Dan Ives $50 price target was justified on Palantir Weekly. And if you do a traditional DCF, which is not the way to analyze Palantir or some of these growth stocks, but if you did, to justify that $50 price, Palantir would have to grow at 35%, which would equivocate to $45 billion in revenue up until 2033. That's going to be hard to do. I think it's possible to do. Robinhood right here at 2380. But if you don't use, 35% growth and still play with some of the other numbers like free cash flow margins or operating margins, you can probably get there even without Palantir having that top line growth at 35%. But obviously Q2 is going to have to really show the guidance increases. And I think this price then will be justified. The good thing is that every time, the stock is dipped, like it's not really dipping today, but it is down from where it was on Friday. It kind of holds off at that 27, 28 level. And it is so far since July 5th, it has formed that as a base. We just have to see post earnings if we can hold on to those levels as well. Kelly's making fun of the word equivocate. I don't know why. Equivocate is a real word, I hope. And, I hope I'm using the right word, but it's an intellectual word. So that's why I'm using it. S&P 553, Tesla 246. IWM is up. Small caps are up 1%. Small caps showing a little bit of momentum here. 218.43 on the day. Robinhood right here. Wow, 23.94. So Robinhood looking like it has a shot to get back into the $24 range, which would be nice for Robinhood. TFC is up a little bit, 42.59. So the banks are doing good. Let's check on CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is down 8.52%. So the dip right now still getting worse on CrowdStrike. I think if you're interested in this one, we got to give this at least an hour or two to kind of see how the market plays it out. CrowdStrike now the PE is 523, forward PE at 71, and price of sales at 20.78, which is down from like the, I think, 35 price of sales it was at before this outage happened. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. That is also a very good word. I haven't heard this word in so long, dude. I haven't. I need to. This has been so long since I heard that word. But that is also a very big word. Robinhood right here, 23.98 on the day. Okay, what else do we have from Friday that we were looking at? Oh, Dell is up 2%. SMCI at 802. Schwab, which took a shellacking last week, down 15%. They're up a little bit right now, 0.77%. Johnson & Johnson, 154. IBKR is up a little bit at 121. Upstart up 3.7%. The rate-sensitive companies now are starting to get a little bit more momentum. Path is at 1216. Google 181. Enphase 106. That one got a nasty red candle from 110 to 106. So that one's down. And Nvidia is up now 3%. It was up 2%. Now it's up 3%. So there you go. Nvidia holding on to its gains. Not too bad. Toby says if crowd dips further, I think 260 to 265 would be a better entry. Yeah, I agree. I mean, to some of the bulls I was talking to, their argument was that the fair value of CrowdStrike is probably 260 if you valued it at the same level with Palo Alto. However, crowd trades at a premium for like a variety of reasons. The question is, one of those reasons is reputation. If reputation goes away, does that Premier One valuation start to take a bit of a hit, which it could. But 260 is what I was told as well. Fair value looks like on CrowdStrike. And so we'll see what that happens with today. Tesla is up 248. All right, not bad. This might be the, 4%. This might be the pre-earnings pump we see going into tomorrow. And as long as Tesla can kind of hold up these numbers and do what they need to do, we should get a bit more momentum. But Tesla's at 249. Again, I would love to know in the chat, do you think Tesla dips from here? I mean, on earnings, or do you think Tesla just holds up? I don't know, dude. I want to say Tesla like really crushes earnings and they say FSD is on the way and like all this good stuff happens, but I also feel like it's run a lot and it would need a lot to justify going higher. So I don't know. Everyone's saying it's dips. Some people are saying it holds. A bunch of people saying it dips. Energy should come in pretty strong. Yeah, but I don't know if the street's going to value the stock on energy right now. Energy is still a small part of the business, even though it's the fastest growing part. ELF is down 4%. I still don't know why ELF is falling as much as it's falling. I mean, ELF has fallen pretty dramatic, dude, from 230 to freaking 169. Look at this. It was at 183 the other day. And then if we go, it was at 219. It's not 230. 219 on July 12th. 10 days later, July 22nd, it's at 168. I didn't see any downgrades. I didn't see anything, really. I guess the street is thinking the state of the consumer is in such a bad spot that makeup's just not going to be bought. That's what ELF sells. But you could have been holding on to some really juicy ELF gains. And see, this is the weird part about this market. It's like you have to protect your gains now. And at 219, was it the most obvious in the world that ELF was overvalued? I don't think so. You could make an argument for why it was like quote unquote overvalued, but I don't think it was overvalued to the point where it's going to fall 20%. But that's what happened. So protecting gains going into the end of the year, I think is going to be one of the bigger themes of this market. And same thing with Tesla here at 250. Is it overvalued? I don't really think so, given the potential and given what FSD is going to look like. But if we fall to like 180 again, I'm sure a lot of people would say that it was obvious to sell after an 80% run up. I just don't know if we fall that low and we have like an ELF like collapse. Would you buy the dip on ELF? No, not really. Because the reason ELF is falling is because their growth is slowing down. Remember, they already lowered guidance of growth this year from last year. Last year, they had a phenomenal year. But their growth is slowing down. And so if the street's already tanking it and the growth slowing down, I don't know if like it's a juicy buy the dip opportunity. The difference between them and CrowdStrike is CrowdStrike's growth is going up. CrowdStrike now falling even farther, 278 down almost 9%. And so their growth is increasing. The perception now is that their growth might not increase given this whole disaster with the Y2K event. But they're a little bit in a different situation on that dip. Okay, what else do we have? Tesla still maintaining its momentum. Nvidia 121. Tesla now at 4.46. Robinhood 23.85. Palantir 28.73. S&P is still green, up almost 1% today. So again, S&P is very resilient, up from 548 to 553 in a day. after falling from 565 last Monday. SoFi still green. PayPal is a little green. Netflix is green. Meta is green. Mercado Libre is green. And then Rivian right here at 17 bucks. Rivian green as well. American Express, they had earnings last week. They're starting to recover. They fell after earnings. Apple is up. MicroStrategy, 1,800. Congrats to those who have MicroStrategy. That one showing real signs of life after Bitcoin got back to 68,000. And then Snowflake right here at 130. Snowflake as well is up about 0.44%. Nubank. Yeah, Nubank got upgraded today to I think 1450, but Nubank is down 5%. Or maybe they got downgraded? No, I think they got upgraded. It would make sense if they got downgraded. That's why they're down a little bit. Let's see. Nubank. Oh yeah, downgraded. So Nubank. No. So Nubank got downgraded from neutral to from overweight to neutral, but their price target from JP Morgan went to 1450. So they downgraded the buy or sell on the stock, but they upgraded the price, which is always a very interesting thing when banks do that. It's like they're saying, yeah, we think it's definitely worth more than what it is right now, but we wouldn't buy it. So that's always they usually do that when the stock is above the price target that they're upgrading it to. Because if it was below it, you would obviously buy it because you would see some momentum. Best AI play next year is Alibaba. Oh boy, that's a hell of a statement. Alibaba up 1.69%. China just lowered their reserve requirements for banks this morning, I believe. So that's great for China. That's definitely good for the broader liquidity in the markets. But that still is not something that the street, I think, is going to get super excited for until they feel that investing in China is not going to lead to regulatory downsides, along with this whole Taiwan overhang that still currently exists. Okay, let's go to CNBC, see what they're talking about, and then we'll come back and look at some of the other stocks that we are seeing. Starbucks actually is an interesting one. Let's look at a little bit about Starbucks. Again, Elliott got that activist stake in them. CEO really botched the interview last time he was on. So we'll see if Elliott has any new ideas for Starbucks.
Southwest and Disney, right? Where it's
I mean, like Elliott goes to, I think that they would have expected a lot more resistance with Salesforce. So Elliott goes to Salesforce, and Mark Benioff says, "Hey, tell me what to do." And they are thinking like, "Oh, give me a break. It's going to be." No, he said, "No, like really, like let's meet. Let's meet constantly. I'll meet with you I'll meet you on Saturday." I mean, there was amazing synergy between what Elliott wanted to do and Mark thought that stuff it was really great. And then Southwest, it looks like they just want a total overhaul because Southwest is not where they think it should be. Newlands and Constellation, very good. If you work with Elliott, they have a lot of good people. It's kind of like bringing in McKinsey, but not having to pay for it and being more attuned. I think that Starbucks is a very big buy here because of Elliott.
well, you've been saying, right? Have you not been saying, like you did with Best Buy, to 90?
Yes.
Has that been the? That's been.
No, I think Elliott recognizes that try as they may, they haven't crushed the brand. I also think that, and I am being vicious there. I do think that there was a problem with pro-Palestinian protests. Maybe as that, I don't want to say anything dies down because it's not right. It's a political issue. I don't know, but that has really hurt hundreds of Starbucks stores. So if that goes rearview mirror, then you've got the win at your back. And I know that Elliott they come in peace, not unlike 10 Bears in Outlaw Josie Wales. But then it gets ugly if you don't respect their view.
Yeah,
you got to respect their view, and if you don't, you're really out of your mind.
Like you point out.
Would anyone buy the dip on Starbucks? That is an interesting one, dude. Elliott is a private equity firm that takes activist stakes in companies. CrowdStrike now getting a shellacking here, down 9.7% of the day at 275. We'll see if this bottoms anytime soon, but this one is down. Starbucks, to me, I like Elliott getting into them. They're down 4% now again on the day. They were up 8% last week. I like Elliott as well as an activist investor. I think they can make some changes, but their China exposure is not good. I mean, China literally having to increase the reserve or decrease the reserve ratios today. That only shows that China's struggling. And then the coffee is expensive, dude. I mean, like it's expensive. And we're seeing that in the numbers. That's not just, basic analysis that the coffee is expensive. We're seeing the subscriptions go down year over year because people don't want to be subscribed to a company where they know they're going to have to be just overpaying, and the consumer weakening a little bit. They're not going to pay that much for this type of coffee. So Starbucks to me, I don't know how easy of a buy it is unless they come out in earnings and really shock. Tesla right here at 250. But as of now, I still think it's a little bit tougher to get excited for Starbucks. China issues are probably just temporary. What makes you say they're temporary? Because I'm curious as well when the China stuff eases up. But from all the data I'm looking at in China, it looks like China's heading down the drain. Granted, it might be temporary. But with Nike, Starbucks, etc., a lot of those companies seeing some bad momentum. Elf recovering a little bit right here. Is at 168. Now it's at 174, down only 2% instead of 5% on the day. So that one recovering a little bit. Robinhood 2376, TSM 170, Tesla here 251. Look at that. Tesla, nice up green candle today. Maybe it's because Elon said Optimus is coming in 2026. If you're just joining, he said that a couple hours ago. Maybe it's because Trump is more likely to win now that Kamala is going to be the presumptive candidate, and a Trump presidency theoretically is good for Tesla. At least that's what Elon believes. Or it's just a pre-earnings pump by retail going into tomorrow, hoping that Tesla gaps up to maybe 270, 280, and they're getting in before we see earnings. Xi has shifted on as an anti-business stance, getting back to his communist roosts. Yeah, I mean, there's been a slight shift right there with Xi. The question is going to be, is it enough to get a lot more investment into the broader country as well? Do you think they're in a permanent recession for China? I don't think they're in a permanent recession, but I definitely don't think the issues they're having are temporary. I mean, it got to the point where I was reading articles last week saying China's thinking of unbanning Bitcoin because of how bad it's getting. So like Nvidia right here, wow, 123, Nvidia's up almost 5%. I don't think it's a permanent recession, but I definitely don't think in the next few months China gets out of all their issues. And that's why I don't think Alibaba's moving as much. I mean, Alibaba's at $90 in March, fell all the way back to 60. Now it's at 76. Alibaba is like a $200 stock that is stuck in this range because the whole global equity markets are just concerned about if they can survive in the geography that they are existing in, which is China. 250 right here on Tesla. Wow, so Tesla and Nvidia actually going up. Tesla and Nvidia going higher. So let's check small caps now. Small caps are up, but not up as much. Again, it's like clockwork. When Tesla and Nvidia go up, or really Nvidia, small caps, this was up 0.85%. Now it's up 0.34%, the IWM. It can't catch a break, dude. It can't catch a break. TNA is up now 1%. Like every time it gets momentum, if Nvidia goes higher, like it's like it's algorithmic. The small caps just can't go with large caps, which means if we see Nvidia finally take a collapse back to like 100, maybe that's what gets small caps and IWM back to 230, 240. But so far, every time Nvidia dips to 116, 117, the market comes in and they buy it up. So I guess it'll be interesting to see where Nvidia ends up through the rest of the next few months. Google's up 2.5%. Is SoFi down? SoFi is down. Okay, SoFi is officially red. Google is up 2.5. Yeah, big tech's up. Big tech is up. That's why the S&P, look at that, 554 on the S&P. The Nasdaq's probably what, 492, 482 right now. Okay, so it dipped a little hard on Friday. 482, that's up 2%. All the analysis we've been doing about rotations, all of that goes out the window if the market just piles back into big tech, which honestly is the safest thing for the market to do. Do you really want to put your money in small caps over Google? I don't know any fund manager that gets super excited to buy unprofitable growth companies like small cap over Google. But if Google was 250, I think obviously like it would get a bit ridiculous. At 182, it still is a bit ridiculous. It's up 30% year to date. But is it that ridiculous enough to actually transition funds into the small caps or into any other sectors or segments of the market that are not growing and have as much free cash flow as big tech? Elliot invested in PayPal and Match Group. No green shots yet. Yeah, that is true. That's a good point. Match Group right here, down about 1% on the day. And then PayPal not being able to get too much momentum either. I don't know. Elliot's going to have to do something really interesting in Starbucks, and I don't know what ideas they have. I do like that they took a stake, though, because at least it shows that private equity is thinking that this company is undervalued, but the direction of changes are going to have to be pretty dramatic to see any momentum. Robinhood right here at 2360, TSM 169, S&P at 553.99 on the day. Grinder, where's Grinder? Let's check on Grinder. Grinder is probably down if Match Group is down. Grinder, where are we at? Grinder is up 0.3%. Okay, so that's up slightly. Grinder's kind of been stuck in that 11 to 12 range for the past couple months now. So when we see earnings, we'll probably see what happens with Grinder. CrowdStrike down 9.89%. So officially about 0.12% away from officially going down 10% on the day. Palantir is now red as well, down about 1%, 28.33. Let's look at the SaaS names. SaaS names, are they down? SaaS names are green except Palantir, CrowdStrike, and Twilio. And GitLab. Twilio, GitLab, CrowdStrike, and Palantir are all down. Everything else is up today. Snowflake's up, CRM's up, Mongo's up, Adobe's up. So a rare inverse. Usually Palantir's green, the rest of SaaS is red. Today Palantir is red, and the rest of SaaS is actually green. All right, what else do we have? Also, the huge increase in Tesla sales in China could be a leading indicator to their economy starting to bounce back a little. So I don't know if that's the case, because I feel like the people that are buying Tesla in China are like already rich, if I'm not wrong. Adobe right here at 556. Like if you buy a Tesla in China, given you could buy a BYD, which is I think like 40% cheaper, if I'm not wrong, you're probably already in the elite class of Chinese civilians. So I don't know if Tesla is an indicator that China is like recovering. Maybe it is, but that is one thing I think at least to think about in the context of China and Tesla. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at this clip right here in the context of, I guess you could call it a broader bear case for the market. So this is someone who thinks there's a bit too much liquidity, and we're probably going to see some issues in the context of where the market is going. Let's get their bear case, and then we'll keep going from there. What do we have right here? Being elite in a communist country is ironic. Yes, that is definitely the case. Okay, so let me pull this up right here.
The NASDAQ 100 falling 4% this week. The Russell 2000 higher by 1.7%.
This week. And we heard a lot of things. We've heard about higher tariffs. We've heard about now a weak dollar from J.D. Vance as being some kind of a goal, and also a flat tax. All things that sound blue collar, but some of those things are in conflict with each other.
Yeah, in particular, I think the currency-related policy is a bit confusing in the sense of the implication of adding significant tariffs, which should be both supportive to the U.S. economy and also inflationary, are also supportive to the dollar by reducing our reliance on foreign imports. So that's a positive to the dollar. And then on the other side, talking about how the dollar should fall as a policy goal. I think the challenge for any policymaker in the U.S. government is currencies are notoriously difficult to control. So their policy that is much more probabilistic is that implementation of tariffs, which would be supportive to the dollar, supportive to U.S. growth and investment, but also inflationary. And so when you talk about that sort of medium to longer term, as we turn to 2025 and start looking there, are we going to be able to see this persistent disinflation, a soft landing in an environment where inflationary political policies are being pursued by possibly a new administration?
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Christina,
So we got some breaking news right here. Bob Elliott right there is talking about some of the issues with the potential to put up tariffs and what that would do for an inflationary broader ecosystem. So Dan Ives just tweeted, "We are seeing IT outage issues still persist in spots around the globe from the CrowdStrike IT outage heard around the world on Friday. This is not good news for George Kurtz and company in an already bad situation, as it appears a number of businesses are still finding outage issues." That is why CrowdStrike's taken another hit, guys. It's not the downgrade from Piper Sandler. I mean, that's probably part of it, but apparently, wow, down 11%. Apparently, there are still some issues with their IT stuff. That is not good. That is absolutely not good. I mean, that is bad. If CrowdStrike is still having issues across the world, That is not a good thing right now. I want to see if we can get updates on that and see where those issues are coming from. It looks like airlines are still having some of those issues. Yeah, if that's the case, this stock's getting hit. This stock's absolutely getting hit. Absolutely getting hit if that plays out. But we'll see, where it comes through. You would think on Saturday a lot of that stuff would get fixed, but if it's still bad, then it's obviously not good right now. Now, CrowdStrike did put out an article and they said that they fixed pretty much everything, or they implied that they fixed everything. But as of now, yeah, it's not good at all. It should have been fixed over the weekend. 100%. 100% it should have been fixed over the weekend. Are you tempted to sell? No, because it's 5 shares, dude. It's not. It's one of those things where you let it go. But I'm not tempted to buy yet. I want to see more worse news. So we allocated enough capital to buy another 5 shares. But if we can get this sucker at 265 or 250, I mean, I would be happy buying there versus at 270. But let's see. Let's see how the street kind of implicates that. It seems like another couple rough days for CrowdStrike until they get all of these businesses up and running. Until then, it's definitely going to get a little issue. Gail says they fixed everything, but those fixes are manual fixes that need to be done on each affected machine. That is a good point. I heard someone on Twitter over the weekend said that they have 51,000 computers that are running CrowdStrike in their business, and all of them had to be manually rebooted. So that could be another reason why it's going a little bit down, or it might take a little bit of time to get it back together. It's not that it's not fixed. Most computers who are unable to reboot will need to be reimagined and requires an IT technician. I mean, yeah, if that's the case, then the current outage that Dan Ives is talking about probably isn't that big of a deal. But if there's more to it and it's actually taking a bigger nosedive, then that could be a reason that's bad. But I want to see how the market thinks of it. 250 would get very exciting right now, but there's no reason to buy a 270 if it's still taking a hit. Warren Buffett just sold Bank of America. Warren Buffett, we just got an update. Warren Buffett just sold 32 million shares of Bank of America. Warren Buffett just sold 32 million shares of Bank of America today. Is Bank of America down? BAC is down 2% on this. This is the first time Buffett has sold Bank of America since 2019. I don't want to be the person that's, using insider selling or institutional selling as a reason for why things might get bad in another year. But I think it's one thing we can't be oblivious to, that a lot of insiders are selling. And I wouldn't say Warren Buffett's he's obviously not an insider of Bank of America, but his first sell in 4 years, I mean, is definitely telling him, hey, it's time to either take profits, or 2025 is going to be not as great as it was over the past couple of years. And it's just something I think we should all keep in mind when these guys start selling that much. Even Apple, I know he only sold a small part of Apple, but still 13 million shares. Even he felt, in that 180, 170 range, it's time to take some profits. Palantir's down 3%. What? Oh boy, there you go. Down 3. Is that because, could you imagine that's because of, I want to say CrowdStrike and SaaS, but it's not CrowdStrike, because the SaaS market, yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of weakness. Mongo's down, Cloudflare is down, Atlassian's down, Snowflake's up, Oracle's up. I don't think Palantir got a downgrade today or anything like that. One of the reasons Palantir could be going down, maybe if CrowdStrike is falling, the argument is that companies with very high price to earning ratios are taking a dip. And algorithmically, the market's like, what are other SaaS names that have very high PEs? Palantir is up there with CrowdStrike. And so maybe Palantir's kind of getting grouped into that bucket and taking a dip off that. That would be maybe a reason why that's happening. But I don't think that's, I don't think that's exactly the reason. I'm not actually sure today why it's taking a 3% hit. But we all do know Palantir running to 29.83 was a bit quick, a little too quick. So any dip is not that bad of a dip as long as we stay above 27. Or maybe because it's crazy overvalued. Yes, that could also be the case. Maybe Palantir is just really overvalued right now by the broader markets, and we take a little bit of dip. But again, every time we've taken a dip on Palantir, we have recovered above 27 pretty easily. So today we're going to see, right now 27.97, already recovering from 27.69. Again, this is the part of Palantir that makes me think Q2 is going to go really well. 27.69 right back to $28 in a matter of seconds. It's just a question of if the market is willing to get this bad boy back under 27, because it's been almost a month now when we haven't seen that kind of happen. Amid an article came out against Karp and Trump. Oh, that's the Financial Times article, Daniel. Yeah, Karp said he's against Trump in Financial Times. I don't think that's affecting the stock at all either. That's just Karp's political opinion getting out there. But why is SMCI down? That's a good question. Is Nvidia down? Nvidia's up 3.5. SMCI, yeah, that's weird. SMCI goes up with Nvidia. That is weird. That is very weird. CrowdStrike might fall below 270, folks. 270.5. I do think if we can project out, and I would have to do a lot of due diligence, and I'll try to bring all that research here. But if I want to talk to a decent number of people in this CrowdStrike name, like Sean, for example, you guys know Sean. He's a friend of the channel. He works in IT. He's been in IT for the past 20 years. I mean, he bought the dip dramatically on CrowdStrike, and he already had a multi-six-figure position. And I'm going to give him a call and see what he thinks about this, because he thinks CrowdStrike is one of the most important companies in the world. So I'm curious. I want to see, because if it is a stupid dip and 250 is a premier, is one of those prices to get a premier company in a market that's raging hot, I think that's something to at least look at. If we look at their year to date, so CrowdStrike was 238 at the start of the year. They pumped up to 400, basically 398. Now they're back at 270. So they've pretty much erased the majority of 2024. Think about it. In a bull market, CrowdStrike has erased pretty much 85% of the gains they've gotten in 2 days. That's exciting to me, because there is a reason they got those gains. Now, it's not exciting if the business literally slows down and the growth slows down, et cetera, because of this like reputation damage. But if the reputation damage isn't there, which I want to talk to a lot of people in this name over the next week. I'm going to have one of my boys do a podcast, Shay. I don't know if you guys know him on Twitter. Shay's on Twitter. He said he would do a podcast with me this week. And so we'll see if there is any real due diligence to look at when it comes to CrowdStrike. Okay, so TJ just texted me. TJ just said he bought 100 shares at 280. He sold the $300 call, collected $11.25, sold a $250 put, collected $900. Adjusted cost basis is $260. Actually, $254 if you include the money from the previous puts we closed out. Okay, so TJ, I'll repeat it again. TJ just texted me. He bought 100 shares at 280, sold the covered call at 300, picked up $11.25 in premium, sold the 250 put at 823, collected 900. So an adjusted cost basis is 260, basically running a strangle here on CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike now taking a pretty nasty dip, down 12% at 267. Let's see. Someone says it's not normal in a company to push anything without code review, automated tests, acceptance tests, yet alone this slow rollout in production on a Friday. So I agree. The deployment of code on a Friday from CrowdStrike was horrendous. It made no sense. However, I am genuinely thinking this was a mistake, because CrowdStrike has done updates like this for the past 10 years and they've gone flawlessly. So I really do think this was one of those moments where it was a bad mistake, but it's not like their culture is an engineering culture that is so inept and so idiotic that these mistakes happen time and time again. Like, we've never seen a mistake like this ever happen from CrowdStrike. The reason they got a premium from the market is because they've had flawless execution. So to me, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I watched a couple of interviews with George Kurtz over the weekend. I would encourage other people to watch some of the interviews of him explaining the overall market opportunity for CrowdStrike and how they've executed. This guy's a rock star founder and CEO. And so this mistake is bad, but it's not like humans aren't prone to make mistakes. It's the first mistake they've ever really made in the history of the company that has been this bad. So I agree. It was a horrible mistake. It's just a question of like, well, that also brings up the question of like, was this actually a mistake, right? Because if it's that egregious of a mistake, was there some type of other, and this is why probably there's going to be an investigation, some type of, ill intent that was deployed against CrowdStrike, and they're saying it was a mistake, but in reality, it was actually a cybersecurity breach. Now the article they published on the weekend, and the technical terminology they showed indicated that it was just a mistake in the code. But it does beg the question, given how bad it was it actually just that? 600 flights canceled on Monday. Wow. So we still have some issues. The CEO of CrowdStrike was also the former CTO of McAfee during their massive outage in 2010. That is correct. Definitely, you could speak to the bear case of this as well. The other question here is, some people were telling me he might not be the CEO in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. Some people that I was spoken to in the IT industry, they said, look, we love the guy, but this was so egregious that you could make an argument to get rid of him. I mean, I think that's not going to happen, just given he doesn't have F-class shares, so he could get booted. But I do think he is respected enough in the company to stay. So we will see. We will see what happens. Where's CrowdStrike right now? 265 down 12.7%. Nvidia 121. Palantir 27.97. Where's Robinhood 23.52. Verizon, wow, Verizon taking a hit, down 6.3%. I have to go through their earnings. I would imagine guidance is lower. I don't know why Verizon is taking that nasty of a hit. Palo Alto is flat on the day. Centennial, that one is up 14%. So it looks like the market's transitioning the cybersecurity capital from CrowdStrike to Centennial. Centennial was $14 on May 31st. Now it's $24. So it's up almost 100%. And a lot of that money probably is coming from CrowdStrike. Palantir right above $28 again. CrowdStrike 267. Schwab is up 3% today. Berkshire is down a little bit. CRM is up 1.2%. Enphase 103. Dell at 128. And then Nvidia still holding on 3% at 121. Small caps, I think they went red. They went red. There you go. Small caps went red. Broadening of the market not really happening right now. I take a shot every time you say actually or literally, and a double when you say literally super slow and mispronounce it. Do I do that, dude? Is that? I didn't even know I say actually or literally that much. I guess I do. June says, I hope not. I really like the CEO of Crowd. I like him too, dude. I watched a bunch of interviews this weekend. I think that guy's a rock star. I think he's really fucking smart. He built this with his blood, sweat, and tears. He's a founder CEO, so a lot of respect for him. But this was a bad mistake. This was a pretty bad mistake. Now, granted, it's going to be a question of how rewarding are the capital markets when you make a mistake like this if they get greedy. Because this is the time where I think people should lean more into greed over fear. But you should have a healthy caution, or you should be healthily cautious amongst your greed, because the fear might be real. If the fear is fake, then this is like a really good time to get greedy. But I'm going to do a lot more due diligence. I'm going to try to do a couple podcasts this week around CrowdStrike so we can get a little bit more information. But again, the people that I talked to on Friday that have very high, like big positions in CrowdStrike, like it's their like top 3 holdings. Yes, they're biased, but I also trust, their intuition on this. They feel like this is bad, but it's not career ending for the company. And so the stock should recover. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. This is going to be like Tesla at 140 for CrowdStrike. That's kind of what I feel as well. But remember, Tesla at 140 lasted a couple weeks. So this one could last longer as well. I'm not buying my 5 shares yet. There's no point to buy 5 shares yet if they only have bad news. Like, I know the stock is down, but like all I'm seeing is bad news. So no, we're going to stay fucking fearful right now, less greedy, and we're going to wait. I would rather buy 275 than 265 if 265 is not the bottom, right? I would rather pay a little bit more than try to time the bottom if I'm not going to time the bottom effectively. So if 265 ends up going to 255 because we have a little bit more bad news coming out, I can wait. I'm patient. And if I have to buy a 275 or 285, that's still a decent dip buy. So let's see if this thing heads lower. Amidst fears, our alpha boys. Let's buy it now. Oh boy. Let's see. I mean, so this is the Dan Ives tweet that he put out. We have to figure out what is the extent of the damage too, because if the damage is just like some computers that haven't recovered yet, then that's not like really a massive IT outage issue. But if it's actually airlines that are literally shut down, etc., hospitals, then it's bad. So if Dan Ives is saying, hey, we're still seeing some of the outage issues, if that's just computers that are rebooting, then yeah, that might be a little bit of a headwind that eventually turns into a tailwind because that'll get fixed soon. But if it's actual like outages throughout entire businesses and it's not just a rebooting of manual computers, that is definitely not good. And we have to see if it goes lower. Amit started the stream with a price target for those 5 shares at 290, then 280, then 270. Now it's on hold. Yup, that's what happens, folks. When this shit starts falling, that's when we fucking look. If it was at 275 right now and it was like a small dip from the market open, I would feel compelled to. But this thing fell 12%, and it looks like there's bad news on the way. So if we can get greedier and get this sucker at 250. I mean, shit. And if it gets to 250 and we can get even greedier and get it at 245, then, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either. Let's see. We have a lot of time. The good thing here is that, we only bought 5 shares. This is the thing about on the Friday dip is like, there was no reason to deploy a ton of capital on Friday. But if you wanted to get a feeler bet in there with 5 shares, at least you're in the game. And now you can be a little bit more fearful as well. You're making a mistake buying CrowdStrike. Why don't you just buy Palantir? You don't know CrowdStrike products as well as Palantir, so it will be hard to maintain conviction. So 2 things on this. I think number 1, greed, don't know their products as well as Palantir, but I think in this market, when you get a dip, you have to take a little bit of a leap of faith, and you can't, spend 2 years making 3,000 videos about CrowdStrike just to get conviction. Like at some point, you have to be like, hey, do I understand enough about this company to feel they're going to be around for the long term and this is a juicy dip? Do I get in? So I think that's the logic there. Number 2 is Palantir's at 52-week highs. I don't think it makes sense buying more Palantir at 52-week highs versus a company that just got to not 52-week lows, but close to 52-week lows in CrowdStrike. So if you already have a decent amount of a stock and it's at 52-week highs, I don't think you need to stack shares at 52-week highs, right? You just give it some time and kind of let it play out from that perspective. Tom Lee's on CNBC. Okay, let's pull up Tom Lee. Let's see what he has to say. Let's see how he thinks about small caps right now. Here we go.
And rates are high.
Even with some of the relief and things like airfares. We'll talk more about that this morning as well. Our next guest does say that this Friday's inflation data will likely shift the odds higher of a July and September rate cut, supporting the summer of small caps, as he said. Joining us here at Post 9 is Tom Lee, Fundstrat Global Advisors, Head of Research and a CNBC contributor. Tom, it's great to have you.
Great to see you.
You want to start with what the political news or the economic news? What's more important to you, do you think?
In the short term, it's the political news. But really, in the longer term, especially into year end, it's actually the economic news.
Explain why.
Well, in the short term, markets are very sensitive to, especially the sector level, depending on whether it's a Republican or Democratic taking the White House in November, and then especially all the congressional elections and state elections. So I think that's what you saw last week is as probably shifted towards Trump, small caps, industrials, financials rally.
And you're sticking with that call, which is for what, 40% over 10 weeks?
Yeah, the overlap is small caps are very sensitive to a Fed cut and really the probability of a Fed cut, that it's finally happening. And I think it's going to look like the October to December 2023 rally, which was almost 30%. This one should be bigger because of the amount of short positioning and the amount of oversold in the Russell. So yeah, 40% by the end of the summer.
I just want to dig into it. Does it make sense that tech, that Nvidia and Tesla and Microsoft and Apple and Meta should be outperforming as the odds rise for a Democratic victory?
Some of that, it's in a day-to-day, it could be noise because last week you had the biggest down week for the NASDAQ in quite a long time. So I think there is a bit of a dead cat bounce. But to me, I agree with you. I don't think that the FANGs are necessarily a Kamala Harris, taking the White House trade.
But there is some evidence of the fading of the Trump trade, as you mentioned. Russell's underperforming, Bitcoin weaker today, financials are lower, so are energy stocks.
Well, again, it's, the sell-off for the Russell started in the middle of last week. It's down almost 5%. It is a mirror image of what happened in October. After that first week rally, you had a 5% decline over 8 trading days, and then you had essentially a 25% rally for 7 weeks without a drawdown. I'm not sure that's any different today.
Is your longstanding optimism about deflation really changing at all? Do you expect any surprises on Friday?
One print can be uncertain, but I think the forces underway for inflation to fall like a rock are in place. I mean, the reality is there's a durables recession. It's in housing, and now it's in autos. That's like 60% of the CPI basket is in a decline until the Fed really injects confidence by cutting. And so I think there is urgency for Fed cuts to happen sooner. But at the same time, I think the effect on inflation is there isn't another incremental driver for new inflation. So inflation, I think, is going to surprise to the downside, and hopefully it's Friday.
Energy, same story. I know we've got gasoline futures lowest in a few weeks, and we broke 80 today on WTI. Brent's below the 200-day.
Yeah, I think energy's a tough trade in the near term because as long as oil's under pressure, I'm not sure I want to be overweight energy stocks. And if there's drilling under Trump, that's downside pressure to oil. But over the next 3 to 5 years, I think energy is a great investment. But I think this year it's not really going to be the spotlight for us.
So the market is fully priced in September. I guess what I'm wondering is what, as a per cut, and another one this year, likely December. What does the market need to further rally off rate cuts then?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's 96% for September. But I think there's a couple things that can get priced in. As you know, there's some talk of a potential July cut. And I think Friday could actually change those probabilities from a 4%. I don't know what if it goes to 70, right?
It's not his style to not telegraph a major policy change. They're in quiet period, and the meeting is next week.
But there's exigent circumstances because the next meeting is not for 8 weeks, and if inflation has stalled, right? If we have 2 prints of 0 on PCE and this super core is rolling over, I'm not sure anybody would say you need to wait until September. So I think the calculus could change because there's still a lot of inflation hawks out there. I mean, I hear it from our clients that they think inflation has a second wave, and I think that's going to be dispelled.
We're going to see. Friday's important. No doubt about it. Tom, it's good to have you on set.
Yeah,
as
thanks
always.
for having me.
Tom Lee.
As we had.
All right. So Tom's bullish, as always. Interestingly enough, what do you guys think? Do you think Kamala is good for big tech? Because Tom Lee right there says big tech isn't the best under a Kamala administration. Now, granted, I think the markets are pricing in a higher chance of Democratic victory, but still Trump ends up winning, which is why big tech is going up today. Nvidia right here up 30%. And so maybe that's why big tech is going up, even though the Democrats have a better chance of winning than they did with Biden. CrowdStrike now at 269. So it looks like someone said, I think Gene mentioned in the chat or Toby, RSI at 18.9 on the daily. On the monthly, RSI is about 22. So if you just look at it from an RSI perspective, yes, it is oversold. Again, that's not every metric. That's one metric. Right now at 269, it bottomed at 263 for the day. I am curious to see, does that hold or do we retest that bottom? So I think I would want to wait and see if we retest that 263 bottom or if we make our way back into the 270s. But so far, a little bit of a green candle right there coming up from 263. And trying to get back into that 269 range. But again, Tom's big argument about IWM really hasn't played out yet. And I think he feels that a good CPI, which we're probably going to get in August, along with rate cuts, is the catalyst for IWM to take off. But right now, the market's just piling into more big tech as of now. What are the puts on CrowdStrike giving? Let's see. We know TJ picked up $900 for selling the 250 put. Let's go to Mr. CrowdStrike. Let's see. So if you were willing to buy CrowdStrike at, let's call it 270 a month from now, they have earnings on August 27th, I believe. You would be able to capture. Now you would need 27,000. No, more than 27,000, right? No, you would need, 27,000 in collateral, 270 times 100. You would get paid, wow, $18.65 a month from now. Goodness gracious. So what is the premium return on that? So in a month, you would be getting basically 7% return at 270, willing to buy 100 shares at 270. I mean, look, I think a month ago, people would love to get CrowdStrike at 270. Now everything has changed with the global IT outage. Maybe it's still a good deal, but the premiums are definitely up there today. Yeah, those premiums are up 125% today alone, given CrowdStrike fell another 11%. If you were even willing to buy CrowdStrike at 235, you'd get $640 in a month, $640 a share on a cash cure put. So 640 divided by 23,500, that would be a 3% return in about a month as well, if the stock falls another 4%. Interesting. I got 25% in 30 minutes on a 220 put. Yeah, not bad. I mean, if it bounces from this level, those puts are gonna print, and you'll be able to make some premium there. CrowdStrike right here back to 268, down 12%. SMCI, I don't know why they're down, but they're down. Palantir 2811, that's slightly down. Bank of America still slightly down. S&P 552, and then Google right here at 181. Tesla 248, and then Robinhood 2379 on the day. You know, if CrowdStrike really does fall to like 250, 240, this trade could end up becoming a long position, because at that point it gets attractive enough to just like go long on it. But I'm curious if we actually see the downside all the way back into the low 200s. If it is, I think a lot of people would decide they finally want to go long on CrowdStrike. The one thing I think we all can unequivocally say, cybersecurity spend is only going up. And in general, I believe it's catering at about 10% a year. So we're talking about, close to a $200 billion market over the next 7 to 8 years. CrowdStrike's doing about $3.4 billion in revenue. The other guys are close in that $2 to $3 billion range. There's going to be more spend. That's definitely going to be happening. The question is, will it go to CrowdStrike or will it go to some of the other guys here? Bitcoin falling 67,000. So we had Bitcoin at 68 over the weekend when Kamala was announced to be the nominee. Now we're back down to 67. So that's taking a little bit of a hit. Meta closing in on 490. Amazon at 183. Amazon had 14 billion in the Prime sales. So Amazon had a pretty good Prime weekend. Nike's up about 2%, up a little bit from that $71 bottom. Apple 226. Serve Robotics is up another 68%. This is because Nvidia took an equity stake in them. So these guys are up. Bitcoin now falling below 67,000. And Amazon right here, 183. Meta, 488. Netflix, 642 on the day. Where's Celsius? Yes, where's Celsius? Celsius, damn, bro. Down another 5%. I bet Kathy's buying more. Yeah, Kathy's probably buying more CrowdStrike today. She bought 33,000 shares on Friday. Does CrowdStrike have a moat? Honestly, I'm not sure. That is a question that I am going to try to figure out over the weekend, or not the weekend, over the week when I talk to some larger investors in it. Some people told me no. It's just an endpoint security app. It can easily be taken off your broader infrastructure in the IT department, and you can replace it easily. Other people have said their endpoint security is uniquely differentiated from something like Palo Alto, which is why they're growing so much, but maybe their growth has more to do with their go-to-market than it does the actual product. So that is a good question. I'm not sure if it has a moat, quite frankly. I just think it got to an attractive valuation, but the question of a moat, honestly, not sure yet. And we'll have to see if there is somewhat of a moat. See, some people are saying there's a huge moat in the chat. Some people are saying there's not. I think that's still a little bit of a debate on if it is or not. I think the moat lost some water if it does. The moat definitely lost some reputation. That's the issue. It definitely lost a bit of reputation. Celsius, I still don't know why Celsius is down other than the market just having a bad. Let's look at the Celsius cash care puts. What are the premiums we can get on Celsius? I'm not going to sell any of these because I don't like Celsius at all. Again, it's hard for me to think the drink is going to become that big. Even though it's already pretty damn big, but I just like Red Bull, Monster are the ones that I think are better. Okay, so a month from now, yeah, it's decent premiums. At $45, you can get 345. At $40, you can get $1.52. That's not horrible. What is that? So $1.52 divided by 4,000. That's 3.8%. That's not bad. At 44, 287 divided by 4,400. That's 7%. Yeah, so the premiums are up there a month from now. But if they have a crappy earnings, this one's going to take a bit of a hit. And I don't know Celsius enough to know if they're going to have a crappy earnings or not. I've got to do a lot more due diligence on them to see if they are or not. Because now the growth estimates might have gotten so low that they might end up beating. Or the stock at least has gotten so low that it wouldn't react negatively to a miss. But it would react positively to a decent beat. Do you guys still have problems with Schwab? Yeah, let me know in the chat if anyone's having issues with Schwab. Some people might still have some issues given the CrowdStrike outage Schwab was connected to as well. All right, what else do we have? Celsius 47. Nvidia 122, that's going even higher right now. PayPal at 59.90, CrowdStrike at 268. Domino's, a little recovery right there, up 1%. Micron 113. This one also got smacked after earnings and hasn't really been able to find its footing since it was at 150 at one point. So all the semis, a little bit of cyclicality got into them. Let's actually look at the semis right now. All of them are green except SMCI. Interesting. AMD's up 2%, Nvidia's up, Taiwan's up, Qualcomm is up, Broadcom is up, ASML is up, Intel's up a little bit. SMCI is down. Interesting. SMCI is down. Why is Palantir down? I honestly don't know, but it's not really down that much. It's down about 2%. Again, Palantir, like CrowdStrike, has a premier valuation. Palantir doesn't have the premier growth that CrowdStrike has. So this Q2 earnings, either this thing tanks or we head to the next level, or we just even maintain our multiple, which I would be fine with, given that we're up 70% year to date. So I think Q2 earnings is going to matter a lot. I think even if we have subpar earnings, the argument for why we don't tank and fall back to 22 is because it feels like the price action is being controlled by the institutions, and they know a government contract is coming. They know NATO like they know stuff is coming. Same thing with Tesla. Therefore, they'll deal with crappy numbers because they know the growth is going to be there. And that might lead to like growth, but still a stock that's hovering around 27 to 29 because the toots aren't willing to sell it. I could be wrong on that thesis, but if that plays out, I also think that wouldn't be the worst thing after Q2 earnings, given we might not get, a massive beat and raise by Palantir. And I'm saying that because historically, that doesn't tend to happen. Palantir brought in $533 million in Q2 last year. That was 13% growth. This year, they're projecting 650, which would be 22% year-over-year growth. If they bring in 665, we will have 25% growth. So they have to beat by 15 million this quarter, which is not asking for a ton. But if we can bring 15 million more and 665 in revenue, that'll be 25% year over year. I think we at least hold this multiple, if not go a little higher. And we would obviously raise guidance at that point. If we don't, then, we'll have to see what ends up happening with Palantir. 3-day rule applies here with CrowdStrike. Let it stop selling and wait for a bounce. Yeah, I agree. So we got another day left of CrowdStrike right now, back at 271. Let's see where this one ends up going. The only thing I'm worried about on CrowdStrike is there more bad IT news that's going to come out over the next couple of days? Because I thought it was the end of it on Friday, but given there's a little bit more bad news, maybe, we wait a couple of days and see if there's any other PR. After that PR is done, then it's just a question of, all right, is the market ready to really buy the dip? You guys are calling me a pussy for not buying CrowdStrike? Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. CrowdStrike right here, 271. It's at $66 billion in market cap, dude. This thing was like 85 or 90 on Friday. So it's definitely taken a haircut. SMCI 778, S&P 553. Yeah, the market's kind of just boring right now. Nothing. We're green in some pockets, red in other pockets, but no kind of trends across the direction. Schwab working right for the first time for me. Again, everyone talking about the 500 PE. The PE is coming down in 2 weeks or 3 weeks on the earnings. So the earnings that CrowdStrike, again, the reason you get such a high PE is because you're growing so fast that the street knows that PE will eventually come down. They're willing to pay a premium because of that growth. So the PE concerns around CrowdStrike to me are a bit just not that exciting, because if we know they're growing that much, like CrowdStrike's actually growing. They're not like other companies that really aren't growing, but they're getting a massive PE. They're actually growing. That PE is going to collapse. Same thing with Amazon, where their PE is coming down. Now, Palantir, unfortunately, until their growth substantiates the PE is just going to be high to be high. And my argument is Palantir is getting a premium, not because of the growth, but because it's just a cool company, like a really cool company, right? There's something about Carp that's like, it is what it is. You might hate that argument, love that argument, but that is why Palantir gets a premium. CrowdStrike gets the premium because they grow a lot. The street's not just giving them a high PE because they like overpaying for something. So as that growth accelerates, we should see the PE come down. And the question is, if the stock is in this range going into earnings, this might actually be the best setup going. I mean, I would love CrowdStrike at 270 before earnings, pumping back to 315 versus it recovering to 315 on earnings. And then they announce, some headwinds and it falls back to 270. So I actually think the setup is not the worst either. We got Kris said we can call him. All right, let's call Kris. Let's get his thoughts on what's going on as well. Yeah, Elf is down as well. Elf is down. Elf is down.
I'll be right there in like 5 minutes. I'm on a work call.
Kris.
What's up, dude?
All right, Kris, you're on a work call. I love it.
Yeah.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
Good. So a couple of things, just with the whole thing with PEs, like sometimes the PEs can be a little bit misleading because imagine right now you go from negative PE, which is you're losing money, to now all of a sudden becoming profitable, and you're only profitable by 1 cent.
Right.
Whereas last year you lost $1. So it looks like, oh my God, the PE is crazy high for a company. But in actuality, you have to look at it from an improvement standpoint. Like, oh, they lost $1 last year. This year, they made a penny, you know? So it's kind of one of those things. They just have to be careful with the PE. I think a lot of times people value too many things based on just a PE. And the thing is, PE is a great metric, but traditionally it's for like
more mature companies, right? Like the Googles of the world, et cetera.
Yeah. You know, and something that you can benchmark historically, usually when you're transitioning from unprofitable to profitable, PEs can seem out of whack. You know, that's why I personally use more like operating income as a better baseline to figure out like, okay, how fast are they growing? How much money are they generating? Like, what are they doing with that operating income to basically boost up the business, you know?
So what do you think about CrowdStrike at these levels?
All right, so my organization, we use CrowdStrike. I had to deal with all the BS that came along with it, and my organization is probably going to lose about, I'd say, at least $1 million, maybe $2 million of actual like time and energy and efforts. Like one of the things that really sucks is that we have all these workstations that we sent out to end users who work across the country for us. So everyone is remote now. So I have doctors that work out of Philadelphia. I have doctors that work in Hawaii, right? And they have physical machines. Now, the thing is, we also have a BIOS lock on the PC. So you can't even get it into safe mode without it being physically with us. So they're going to have to send all of that stuff to us. And then we're going to have to re-image the PCs and then send them back to the people. Now, not only is that going to cost, you know, shipping and handling, but it's also going to cost worker productivity, right? Because now while we're doing all our stuff, these guys aren't working, you know, and they're contractually. So there's so many downstream impacts on organizations. Now, I'm not going to say this, you know, that CrowdStrike is like a shitty company by it. It's not. And the product is actually pretty amazing. And the problem that you're going to run into is that in the short term, there's just going to be way too much bad PR. And this bad PR is going to keep like anytime the stock is trying to rise again, it's going to be like the news media is going to hit it again with like, oh, this is happening and that's happening, you know, and then it kind of just like sinks in. It's almost like a Boeing thing. Remember where it's kind of like the one incident happened and then two happened and then three. And then now all of a sudden, every time, it just keeps getting highlighted. I mean, the same exact thing happened to Snowflake, and Snowflake hasn't recovered, you know. And Snowflake, I would argue that it's actually less of an issue on Snowflake's part because all it was multi-factor authentication, whereas this one was an actual mistake by CrowdStrike. So I think I would not be in any hurry to add at any price right now. You really have to do more of a sentiment analysis to figure out like what the overall impact is, and then how this company is going to respond. And then we'll see where things go from there.
Do you think cybersecurity in general is something that's like everyone should pay more attention to? Because this was a part of the market I think people didn't care about too much 2 years ago, but now it seems like it matters a lot.
Cybersecurity is one of the most important things, man. Like every organization has multiple layers of cybersecurity built into their operating structure. And if they don't, they're literally going to get like, I don't know, they're going to die basically, because every hacker on the planet right now is always looking for soft targets. Like even right now, like you as an individual, how many times do you keep getting calls by these scammers and saying, oh, do this and do that? And so, you know, imagine that on a corporate level. Like, there's so many companies, if you look, have been victims of ransomware, and the total cost of a data breach can be in the hundreds, into the millions, if not hundreds of millions, depending on how big your organization is. So
Right.
I think cybersecurity is cybersecurity is one place where you definitely want to have an investment in over a long period of time. The thing is, there's always going to be different layers of the cybersecurity industry that you kind of want to have like exposure to. So like an example is SentinelOne, then you have Palo Alto. All of these companies, they all kind of have like little niches there, here and there. And some people think that it's one of those things where you can just kind of up and remove like a huge part of your infrastructure. It's not. By the way, I love CrowdStrike Falcon, especially because you don't notice it. Like it feels like it's not even there. That's how good it is from an endpoint security standpoint.
Falcon is their premier app, right?
Yeah. Like if you work at a large organization and you have like 100,000 endpoints, dude, you want CrowdStrike on there. Like, I'm telling you, you will not feel any sluggishness or slowdowns or anything. The other thing is one of the biggest benefits to CrowdStrike is that imagine right now one organization gets hit by like some sort of malware, that gets detected and automatically the definitions get updated everywhere, which means now it's almost like a giant inoculation to that specific type of malware. So it's one of those things that like this is a company that's highly underrated when it comes to this specific space right now because of this one incident,
Right. So I guess it's going to be a question. So what's your gut tell you a year from now? You think this incident is going to get rid of their sort of premium valuation, or you think they resolve it and the lawyer fees and the lawsuits are not enough to take down the growth? Because I think the way you justify it going below 200 is if people just leave and they go to Palo Alto, right? But if that doesn't happen, I guess the question is where the growth goes.
Everyone was valuing it like a growth company, and so now this presents a really big headwind,
right,
for a lot of salespeople. I mean, at least in the short to medium term. I mean, if your time horizon is 5, 10, 15 years, I don't think you could go wrong with CrowdStrike.
Yeah.
But in the short and medium term, you're definitely gonna feel the volatility here and there.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Kris. Appreciate you calling in and sharing that color. That was awesome.
Take care.
All right. Bye. This is where traders might end up having to be long-term investors on CrowdStrike. Like if you bought a lot of CrowdStrike on Friday at the 300 dip, you might have to be like, you know what? Holding it for 10 years isn't the worst idea. Like it might be one of those things that happens. But let's see. I mean, this is why sometimes you got to DCA slowly into these companies right here. So CrowdStrike here at 272, recovering a little bit from that 263 low. We'll see how the market treats it for the rest of the day. Palantir 2819 down 1.39%, went to 2770, then bounced right up. And then SoFi right here at 744, red on the day. Those 5 shares forced them to do the long DD. But actually, seriously, like this is kind of why sometimes it's important to just buy, even if you have to buy a little higher. And thankfully, it's 5 shares, it's not 500 shares. But sometimes when you're in it, you actually really start. Honestly, this is what happened with Palantir. I had so much fucking Palantir, and then stock falls 80%, $6. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna really learn about what an ontology is, and you go on that journey, and like you get obsessed, and then hopefully it recovers. So sometimes when you buy, it does force you to do a little bit more research and get deeper into it, along with the fact that there's just not that many dips in this market, and so I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to really go deep and do research on a dip we're seeing in the market. Now, maybe that changes. Maybe the next month we get a ton of dips in a ton of areas, but I don't know if Nvidia going to 116 is like the dip that people are waiting for. Nvidia right now back at 123. Or Apple going to 222 last week, now that it's from 235. Like a real dip is looking like CrowdStrike at 270, down from 380. Could it go lower? Sure. But that to me is like a substantial dip in a bull market. That's just not easy to find. SoFi was probably a big dip in a bull market as well. And those who picked up SoFi in the low 6s, which was like the real downside momentum for SoFi, they've done well. But outside of that, we haven't seen a pretty aggressive dip. Now, Celsius is another one, 99 to 46. I would say that's another real dip in a bull market. However, Celsius is selling energy drinks. CrowdStrike, as Kris just mentioned, is selling one of the most important things an enterprise needs, which is cybersecurity. So a little bit different of the value proposition. But Celsius and CrowdStrike, I would say, are two of the largest real dip opportunities we've seen in this market. I don't count Nike or Starbucks or anything because they aren't really growing companies. I'm talking about companies that are actually like growing. They're young. They have momentum. Nike and Starbucks are a little bit too old to me and just aren't growing that much anymore. Amit, at least you have a good sense of humor about this stuff. Yeah, dude, it's 5 shares. I mean, like, it's not. This is the CrowdStrike position. It's we're down $174 on CrowdStrike, 177. So I mean, if we went balls to the wall on CrowdStrike, then yeah, this would be a bit more painful. But you put in 5 shares, you start to feel out a little bit. My portfolio is at the point where I could lose $200, and that's okay on paper. But I am interested now. It definitely has got me very curious. Also, one thing I will say is CrowdStrike has been on my radar for a very long time, cybersecurity in general, but I always thought the valuation was stupid. Like, there was no way in hell at 380 you were going to get people get excited about CrowdStrike, especially after the S&P pump. I also didn't like CrowdStrike because they bumped out Palantir for the S&P. So CrowdStrike, GoDaddy, and KKR, they got into the S&P over Palantir, so that annoyed me as well. But down $100 gets a little bit more exciting. PayPal news. Do we have any PayPal news? It was so funny. Okay, so let me. PayPal's up 2%. I don't think there's any news on PayPal. It's just getting up there. I'll check in a second. On the market close, Steve was there, and Steve on Friday he said Alex Kris needs to go on the Q2 shareholder call for PayPal and say that he needs to say that we are willing to go private if the stock stays at these levels for so long. And I was like, wait a second, Steve, that's a threat. Like, if you're the PayPal CEO and you tell the market, hey, we're going to go private unless basically you buy the stock, right? Basically, you would increase the buybacks to such an extent that you would go private. I feel like the SEC would investigate the CEO for like basically threatening Wall Street for saying, hey, we would take the company public. Same thing that Elon did back in 2018 through a tweet when he said 420 funding secured going private. But Steve was adamant that that's not happening, that's not a threat. And I was like, no, dude, I think that's a threat. So my question to the chat is that a threat? If the CEO on any company goes on the earnings call and says, hey, we're thinking of going private if the stock stays this low for this long because we'll just buy back all the shares, isn't that a threat to the market? Like that, hey, you better buy our shares or else we're going to go private, because going private would have massive implications for shareholders. And I feel like that's a threat, dude. It's a gangster threat. I like it. I don't know if the SEC would like it, though. So that is one idea Steve has on PayPal going higher. Not a threat if it's worded properly. Yeah, maybe there's a way you can word it to make it seem like, like it's just an idea that he has. But it feels like a threat. I'm looking at PayPal. There's no news, no upgrade on PayPal. Nothing came out for this going up right now. It seems like it's just bouncing on a technical reason, but no reasons for why PayPal is green today. No, it's a warning. It's like an Italian mob boss, bro. We're not giving you a threat. We're just giving you a warning. Palantir recovering a bit, 28.27, Nvidia 122, CCL 1859, SoFi 748, SMCI 777. Robinhood 23.65, TFC $43 on the day. So TFC continuing to gain momentum. Palo Alto 332, that's up a little bit. Rivian 17.17. Netflix, wow, Netflix is up 3%. Big tech, it's going. Look at the Mag 7. Look at the Mag 7. All of big tech. Nvidia now up 4%. Tesla 248, and Meta trying to get into 490. Big tech is up. Big tech is up. We are evaluating opportunities to optimize capital, including but not limited to the potential of a capture of a majority of public shares. That sounds so professional, dude, that even Gary Gensler wouldn't realize that's a threat. But imagine if it was a threat. Faraday Future is not part of the Mag 7, but I put it here because we kept looking at it every day when Faraday Future was running. But yeah, it is not a Magnificent 7 stock. Maybe one day. Palantir back to 29 today. Maybe Where's the market right now? S&P is at 554. Okay, so S&P just went up 1%, so that's back after a small dip to 553.5, and Palantir 28.24. I mean, maybe Carnival Cruise back at 1858. That one's up. Celsius still down 5%. Now IWM's going slightly green. It was just red. Now it's up 0.01%. Then Palantir. Again, Palantir recovery from 27.69 to 28.22 just shows how much momentum it has every time it takes a dip to the low set 27s. And this one wasn't even a low 27. This one was a high 27 at 27.69. So market is willing to pay up. Cybertruck is coming to Fortnite. Okay. That's very cool. Interesting. That'll be fun for Cybertruck. Good advertising for Cybertruck. ETH ETFs are coming tomorrow. Correct. They should be launching tomorrow officially. So that'll be exciting for Ethereum. Today, Ethereum is slightly down 2%, but that should be a tailwind for the broader crypto industry. And then Bitcoin is 66.9. Let's look at the crypto stocks. Yeah, they're all down today. All slightly down. Coinbase is down a little bit. CleanSpark's down 3%. Robinhood's the only one that's green. HUD 8 is down. Marathon's down. Riot's down. Cypher's down. MicroStrategy down a little bit. And then Bitfarm's down as well. Bitcoin 66,957. Amit doesn't know what Fortnite is. I know what Fortnite is, okay? It's a movie. So I know. No, I'm just kidding. It's a video game, dude. But does anyone even play it anymore? Isn't Elden Ring the new thing? Or what's another video game? What else do people play besides Fortnite? There's another shooting game besides Elden Ring. I don't know. Elden Ring's the one that pops in my head. I'm not a big video game guy, but Fortnite was big in 2018. Now it's not that big. Kelly says my 10-year-old plays it. Yeah, I mean, Fortnite in 2018 was really popular by Ninja and those people, but now it's not as big of a deal anymore. Destiny 2, yeah, Diablo, that game that Elon plays all the time. I just bought Elden Ring a week ago. Is he a wizard? No, I know there's a bunch of streamers that play Elden Ring, but dude, I have no idea what these. I had a video game phase back when I was like 10, and I got a PlayStation 2. I had Grand Theft Auto, all that stuff, but I don't know. I just never got into it, dude. I started watching YouTube videos and learning magic tricks over playing video games. Like my entire childhood was not defined by video games. CrowdStrike received a downgrade from RBC Capital from 420 to 380. Yeah, we're going to see more downgrades come in. We're going to see, I mean, some people will keep their upgrades, but some banks will definitely give it a bit of a downgrade. 66 on Bitcoin, 66.9. What's her name? Kamala Harris will be talking at 11:30 at some event. So that'll be her first public appearance since being endorsed by Biden. I'm really curious to see when Biden talks. I mean, he's kind of been gone for a while now, so it'll be interesting to see. He didn't give a reason for why he stepped down. He just said he's stepping down. Like, I'm curious if he's actually going to admit that he was getting too old, because I don't think he feels that. CrowdStrike now at 270, but we'll see what he says later this week when he talks. PayPal at $60 right now. Can you please do a magic show live stream sometime? I mean, if you guys want one, I'll do one on like a Saturday night. I still know a bunch of tricks. The problem is no one's here. So like picking the card for you would be a little tough. But I need to bring a guest on the show and do magic tricks in front of them. I still know like 15 of them. But honestly, I started watching a lot more YouTube over playing video games back in 2010, 2011. I don't know why. I just like, and I would watch random stuff like documentaries and like unboxing videos. Like I became a YouTube junkie early, and I think that replaced my like video game time. I got WWE wrestling video games, and I used to play that, but dude, outside, I just got so bored of video games pretty early. I don't know why. It just never intrigued me. I do like playing chess, if that counts as a video game, on the computer, on live chess. But that's it. People still play Call of Duty? That's a thing, dude. Call of Duty is still a thing? Okay, I guess Call of Duty is still a thing. Okay, let's do word of the day, and then I'll get you guys out of here. I do not know how I'm going to say this word of the day. What the heck is this, dude? The definition is having woolly or crispy curly hair. Okay. I'm getting a haircut today as well, by the way, because I need a haircut. Eulotricus.
Eulatricus.
Eulotricus. What the heck is this, dude? The stylist specialized in Eulotricus hair, knowing the best techniques to manage and style tight curls. Oh my, what thick, curly, and Eulotricus hair you have cascading down your shoulders. Dude, what the fuck? Could you imagine telling someone you have Eulotricus thick hair cascading down your shoulders? It's kind of a dope word. I'm not going to lie. It's a cooler way to say, oh, you have nice hair. You have very Eulotricus hair. Tom Lee absolutely has Eulotricus hair. And yes, I have Eulotricus chest hairs. Exactly. There we go. All right. That's it. We'll be back at 3:45. We'll see what happens with the market, and we'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll get back at 3:45 and see how this market ends up evolving. We have a couple earnings after the bell, but tomorrow is going to be the big day with Tesla and Google and their earnings coming up. The market has a Eulotricus future ahead. I'm going to start using this word now. I want to actually see if I can use this word more. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good Monday. I'll see you in a few hours. Bye, everyone. Have a good one.